Hello and welcome to Gypsy Kiss. I am the magical treasure princess, life coach to the rich and famous, and the original author of Important Words video series, Shelley Carney. Yay! So today we're going to be talking about the poem as a rhyme scheme, a poem in its entirety, and kind of discerning what is the important thing about the poem and where do we go from here. And we'll get started with that in just a moment. Okay, so focus on important words, poem, rhyme, scheme. Here the definition of a rhyme scheme: the ordered pattern of rhymes at the ends of the lines of a poem or verse. So those rhyming words that kind of make it into a poem at a very basic level. I'm just going to give you a little caveat right here. I am not an expert on English literature, anything like that. I do speak English fluently, and I have a rudimentary understanding of poetry, and that's about it. So please take that into account when listening to my opinion. I'm not an expert in poetry. I'm just trying to pull out the important things about the poem. But Forrest Fenn also told us that some redneck in Texas could figure it out and go straight to the treasure. So I'm probably at least on that level. Okay. What is a poem? A piece of writing that partakes of the nature of both speech and song, that is nearly always rhythmical, usually metaphorical, and often exhibits such formal elements as meter, rhyme, and stanzaic structure. So, Forrest Fenn's poem meets this criteria. It is rhythmical, usually metaphorical, and exhibits elements such as meter, rhyme, and stanzaic structure. So it's definitely a poem, and it meets this criteria. Just remember metaphorical. Okay, metaphorical, some series of words that has a meaning other than the one shown, and takes a little bit of thinking about. And very often the poem needs to be taken as a whole and understand in order to understand the series of words within the poem, because it has to be in context of the entire piece. So let's think about that as well. This is from Hemispheres magazine article by Margie Goldsmith, the thing that kicked off the international craze with the treasure hunt. And Forrest is saying, what does the word blaze in the poem mean? A horse can have a blaze on its forehead. A blaze can be scraped on a tree to mark one's way. A blaze can mean a flame or a scar on a rock. And what about water high? Does it mean deep or higher than normal? So here he's sort of introducing what might it mean, and that it's maybe a little bit metaphorical. So it's metaphorical in the sense that we don't know exactly the blaze, what that means. We have to figure that out. We have to extract the meaning in the context of the poem. Same with water high. All right, February 4th, 2013 for Mysterious Writings. And Forrest is answering by saying, the person who finds the treasure will have studied the poem over and over and thought and analyzed and moved with confidence. Nothing about it will be accidental. And then he slides into a T.S. Eliot poem. Forrest has a habit of sliding into things to redirect. When I was a preschool teacher, that's what we spent our day doing with the kids, redirecting. When we could see that, okay, they were, not working on the project anymore, they were getting distracted, it was time to redirect. Let's do something else. If they were getting loud and crazy, it was time to redirect. Let's go outside. If they were getting a little bored and hungry, take them in and give them a snack, and then read them a story, and then and then redirect, 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 right? So when people start to dig into things that he doesn't really want to fully answer, he will redirect with a story or a poem. Some people do it with scripture. Some people do it with poems that have meaning for them. Some people do it with stories. He also does it with stories. You ask him a question about something he doesn't want to get into, he'll change it over. And you see that more and more and more as the more interviews he does over the years. He'll pop out another story. Oh, I had an email from some little girl who wanted to know if she had to share the treasure with her brother. And I said, ask your dad. He has this series of stories that we've all heard again and again because he wants to redirect us. This to me was a redirect. And then again, it's not just a redirect because he wants to expand on his answer in a way that is, again, metaphorical. So you have to dig out the meaning, right? So the person who finds the treasure will have studied the poem over and over and thought and analyzed and moved with confidence. Nothing about it will be accidental. That reminds me of this poem. Why does it remind him of this poem? Well, let's take a look at it. We shall not cease from our exploration, and at the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. I added the rest of the stanza from this poem. Through the unknown, unremembered gate, when the last of earth left to discover is that which was the beginning. At the source of the longest river, the voice of the hidden waterfall, and the children in the apple tree. And I highlighted the words through the unknown, unremembered gate because it comes up again in another poem that he's going to recite later. I also wanted to point out, this is an interesting thing to leave off. Does he think that maybe we'll go look for it? Is the gate part of the search? How about the longest river or the hidden waterfall? Are those part of the search? I had to go looking for that. In the poem Little Gidding by T.S. Eliot, Wikipedia says, Little Gidding focuses on the unity of past, present, and future and claims that understanding this unity is necessary for salvation. Is that what he's trying to get across to us by including it here with this answer? Take a look at Mysterious Writings from February 4th, 2013, and see what you think. November 2nd, 2013, Moby Dickens Bookshop interview. The poem in my book is something that I changed over and over again. When you read the poem, it looks like just simple words there, but I guarantee you I worked on that thing. I felt like an architect drawing that poem, drawing a poem. So he was drawing the poem? He's an architect. What does an architect do when they're drawing? What are they providing us? They're providing us with the bones, right? And layers. So, and I talked about this last week, excuse me, with Toby, about how an archaeologist will see the bones maybe of a fossil, fish fossil, and they'll have to imagine the parts that aren't there, the skin and the eye and what color it was, or with the dinosaur, filling in all of the missing pieces of history, or with the pottery, if it's broken, what might it look like when it was complete? How might people have used that? Sorry about that. All right. So an architect does the same thing, providing the bones of the home or the building and where it should go and the sizes and how the pieces all fit together. But then we have to imagine from this drawing, what might it look like? What does the wallboard look like when it's on? And how might we use this space? And what furniture we might put in there, or decorations, or carpeting and paint and colors, and what we fill it in, right? So he's the architect of the poem. The poem is the bones. the fossil, the thing that's we have to fill in with our imagination. All right, that's how I interpret that. May 2014, Dale Neitzel's blog, Scrapbook 70. I wrote this poem in 5 minutes to counter Dale's malicious Garmin malplacement of the treasure. I've read this one to you guys many times. I'm just going to zip through it again. There are as many hints in this poem as there are dents in Esmeralda, who still glides the tar top after 294,000 miles. Dale must be on something, and I don't think it's sarsaparilla. Don't tell me, Dale, and whispers hushed, of golden hoards and treasures lush, and broken trails and bushes crushed, or shattered dreams lost in the rush. This again is that A-B format that he used in the other poem. But say it true and not a fib, and make it plain without the glib. I'll set my spinnaker and jib and go directly for the scrib. I don't know what scrib means, but it rhymes, and that's all I care about. Okay? Interesting. It rhymes, and that's all I care about in this poem. But he said there were hints in it. So how does this poem relate to the other poem? June 29th, 2014, Mysterious Writings. Question is, Dear Forrest, since beginning on my journey with the thrill of the chase, I have found myself having a new appreciation for poetry. I have noticed in your book, The Thrill of the Chase, and heard in your interviews / book signings that you have quoted poets from Lewis Carroll, Charles Dodgson, to William E. Henley, from Omar Khayyam and T.S. Eliot to your friend Evetts Haley. Could you possibly provide a short list, both of some of your favorite poets and your favorite poems? Have some poems been meaningful to you for a long time, and others perhaps have been added to your list more recently? Thank you, Ellen. Thanks, Ellen. I like your questions. This is really a great stalling tactic and a bit of a redirect when somebody asks you a question and you're being interviewed, especially if you're like needing an extra pause and you're being recorded or you're in front of an audience. The best thing to do is, oh, what a great question. Slow it down. Draw it out. The more space between your answer and the person's question, the more likely it is the audience will forget what was asked and you can answer anything and they'll be satisfied. Thanks, Ellen. I like your questions. There was a much celebrated musician who owned a very valuable Stradivarius violin. Once he played in Carnegie Hall to a packed crowd of black ties and bodice-laced dresses. The audience was rapt, enthralled, mesmerized. It was the greatest music they had ever heard. Wow, lots of descriptive words in there. Very visual. Really distracting you from that question. Interesting. At the conclusion of the concert, a standing ovation lasted 15 minutes as the violinist accepted the accolades he so richly deserved. When everyone was finally seated again, the performer took the violin and smashed it over a chair, sending splinters careening into the second tier. A bourbon hush. A bourbon hush? Wow. A bourbon hush fell over the stunned crowd as the musician raised his bow and announced, "That was not my Stradivarius. It isn't the violin, it's the violinist." Do you see again? Forrest brings us a story to redirect us instead of answering the question. Just wanted to point that out. And then he says, I forgot what the question was. Oh, now I remember. It was written. How could he forget? Go back and read it again. Funny that he wrote that in there. In contrast, for me, it's not so much the poet as it is the words. It's not so much the poet as it is the words. So the words are what's important to him in any poem. The words. The words. Not how it's structured. Not what it might mean, but the words themselves. Interesting. There are a few poems located somewhere in the back of my memory where I can pull them out on occasion, mostly for my own enjoyment. Much of the time I don't remember who wrote the words because I'm not cultured enough to care if the truth were known. An exception is Invictus by Henley, as you observed. And in fact, when I was visiting, the one time I visited Forrest Fenn in his home, he did bring up the poem Invictus. And I think he even quoted it a little bit. It's that important to him. He likes to pull it out and use it frequently. There is poetry for all occasions, and sometimes I startle even myself with words that I can remember. As we all know, words can both soothe and alarm your pulse, and that's what makes it so interesting. Is he soothing and alarming our pulse with the words he wrote in his poem? This is the poem Invictus that's so important to Forrest Fenn. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody, but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds, and shall find me, unafraid. It matters not how strait the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. This was written by a young man while he was having a series of surgeries and possibly going to be losing his leg and maybe even his life. And he was in a lot of pain and recovery throughout this process. And this is when he wrote this poem. And I believe this was probably important to Forrest Fenn when he was going through many difficulties, but probably especially when he was going through cancer and that treatment. It matters not how straight the gate. Again, I highlighted that because that's the second poem that introduces a gate. All right. Invictus is a poem which focuses on the human spirit and its ability to overcome adversity. It is a rallying cry for those who find themselves in dark and trying situations, who have to dig deep and fight for their lives. This is from the Venn diagrams. I knew all along where I wanted to hide the treasure, so I didn't need a map or any information to write the poem. Everything was in my head. It took me a while to get the wording exactly how I wanted it. So the wording is exact. In most cases, poems are a work that people polish and work on to get the wording exactly what they want. They want to evoke images, specific images in your mind, in the reader's mind. February 4th, 2014. Many are giving serious thought to the clues of my poem, but only a few are in tight focus with a word that is key. He's told us a couple of times there is one word in the poem that is more helpful, more important than any of the others, and this is where it started. Tight focus with a word that is key, most important. August 6, 2014. Question, is the poem designed to convey a deeper significance? Is there a subtle message you are sharing with the reader and hope they realize? And the answer is no. The poem is straightforward with no subterfuge in sight. So he's not trying to convey any other meaning other than, here's how you get to the treasure. Which is, I don't know, how can we not have found it by now? If that's all the poem is telling us. Here's how you get to the treasure. Begin at where warm waters halt. Take it in the canyon down. Not far, but too far to walk. Put in below the home of Brown. Okay. What? Where are these things? August 12th, 2014. And this is from Mysterious Writings, featured questions. There are a few words in the poem that are not useful in finding the treasure. But it is risky to discount any of them because you don't know which ones they are. But they are not useful. Which words are they that are not useful? Might help us know which ones are the most useful. December 4th, 2014, Mysterious Writings. My alligators were not good pets, but they were good for business because everyone likes to look at them. Again, bringing people to where he wants to direct their attention. Oh, look at the alligators. Now that you're here, go buy some art. I am reminded of a poem from Alice in Wonderland. How doth the little crocodile improve his shining tail and pour the waters of the Nile on every golden scale. How cheerfully he seems to grin, how neatly spreads his claws and welcomes little fishies in with gently smiling jaws. This is a predatory parody poem that was included in the book Alice in Wonderland. And it's about a deception and misdirection, redirecting again. Find that fascinating. That he talks about crocodiles and alligators, and he mentions them several times, such as don't make the alligator mad until after you've crossed the river. March 10th, 2015. I wrote the poem in my book because I needed an avenue where I could present clues and start searchers on the chase. So he wrote a poem. Did it have to be a poem? He's very partial to poems. He likes poems. He finds them fascinating. He memorizes poems. He brings them up to redirect people's attention. So he chose a poem as an avenue where he could present clues and start searchers on the chase. I worked on it for a long time, and I'm pleased that it did its job so well. Its job was to present clues and start searchers on the chase. It did its job so well. Obviously. July 5th, 2015, The Everlasting Forrest Fenn by Taylor Clark. I've said many times that everything about my poem and my book is straightforward. Straightforward. If that were true, why did nobody find the treasure yet? Where warm waters halt, you got to figure out where warm waters halt, he tells us. You got to decipher the clues. Well, if you have to decipher it, how is it straightforward? And poems are metaphorical. You chose a poem as an avenue to present your clues rather than just saying, here's the clues, blah, blah, blah. You wanted it in a verse. You wanted it in a poem format. You wanted it to be metaphorical. How is it straightforward if it's a metaphor? February 4, 2016, Mysterious Writings. If I had it all to do over again, the results would be the same, and I can't think of anything I would change. I feel fortunate that my poem said exactly what I wanted it to say. My poem said exactly what I wanted it to say. That's how I had to work on it for so long to get it exact. February 8th, 2017, Dale Neitzel's blog. Forrest gets mail from a middle school class. This is Forrest writing here. I can see by the first question that your students probably are not asking what they want answered. I will answer the questions as presented and not judge them. I will also leave your students with a poem. It is not a reflection on anyone or the questions, but something for them to think about. This is saying, okay, they didn't ask me the questions they wanted to ask me. They tried to be a little bit tricky. They tried to get questions that would give them answers that maybe I wouldn't have given if they'd asked me straight out. They didn't do that, so I'm going to give them something to think about. Badoom, right? So you didn't ask me the right questions. Let me give you this instead. And then he says, today I went up the stair. I met a man who wasn't there. He wasn't there again today. Oh, how I wish he'd go away. This is from a poem called Antigonish, which was inspired by reports of a ghost of a man roaming the stairs of a haunted house. A haunted house. Is he trying to tell us the special place is haunted? Or what is he saying here? Is he saying that the question they actually wanted to ask is the ghost that tries to hide within the question they did ask? Perhaps. Here's the entire original poem. Yesterday upon the stair, I met a man who wasn't there. He wasn't there again today. Oh, how I wish he'd go away. When I came home last night at 3, the man was waiting there for me, but when I looked around the hall, I couldn't see him there at all. Go away, Don't you come back anymore. Go away, and please don't slam the door. Last night I saw upon the stair a little man who wasn't there. He wasn't there again today. Oh, how I wish he'd go away. What's he saying? Is he telling the kids, go away? Stop asking me questions, kid. I don't think so. I think it's more the here's what's not there, but I see it anyway. Right? I see what you're trying to do. I see what you're doing there. I see you. Also in that same scrapbook or article, is there a specific reason that halt and walk are the only words that do not follow the rhyme scheme? And his answer was, yes, I was limited by my ability. That informs me that halt and walk are both important words, and he couldn't get around them. He had to use those words. March 24th, 2017. This is from 9 News, The Hunt for Forrest Fenn's $1 Million Treasure Chest. At first I thought I was going to die, and I wanted my bones to be with the treasure chest, and my poem said that. When I recovered, I had to change the poem. The poem reads easy, but I spent a lot of time selecting just the right words. Very exact. April 2017, Dale Neitzel's blog, scrapbook 177. As what I thought would be a fitting ending to my book about Eric, I wrote this poem. I called it a quadplet. So Forrest Fenn wrote this poem for Eric Sloan. Mighty oaks from little acorns slowly grow, then finally fall and wisp to naught. But those who plant a seed of words live on in groves of human thought. Very visual, right? Again, very much placed in nature. Acorns growing into oaks and then dying. And then thinking about moving on in the afterlife. That because you've planted a seed of words, because Eric wrote so many books, he lives on in groves, bringing back the vision of all of the oak trees, groves of oak trees, but within human thought. A very well done poem. And you can see that the rhyme scheme, not and thought rhyme, but grow and words do not. So we just have the 2 rhyming words in this one, because it was more important to him to have that vision of what's happening be in your mind than it was for him to rhyme the words. May 4th, 2017, Mysterious Writings. Look at the poem as if it were a map, because it is. And like any other map, it will show you where to go if you follow its directions. It's a map. He said that many times. I just picked this one because I liked it the best. It's a map. As an architect, he drew a map. It's a map. It's an outline. It's a representation of how to get someplace. All right. May 8th, 2017. On the Road with Charlie, Part 1. I've said before that the poem was really written by an architect. Every word is placed in there strategically, and you can't ignore any of the nouns in that poem. Strategically. Is that because he's strategically trying to hide the real meaning, that you have to dig it out? Or is it strategically in that it made a sensible poem that rhymed and put a picture in your mind of someplace in nature? What about it is the most strategic? And again, he brought in the whole architect thing. This is from the same interview. If everybody knows exactly what you're saying or what you mean, then who cares what the word is? And so that thought permeates, manifests itself in the poem. This thought manifests itself in the poem, If everybody knows exactly what you're saying or what you mean, then who cares what the word is? But does everybody know what you mean? Because nobody's found the treasure yet. Okay, these are the poems that are inserted within The Thrill of the Chase. Some of them are from lyrics of songs. Some of them are from other places, other poets that he brought in and put in his book. He chose these poems. These were the poems that were important to him to include in this book. Life is a game of poker. Happiness is the pot. Fate deals you 4 cards and a joker, and you play whether you like it or not. So we talked in the Member Vault a little bit about the joker, what it represents. A joker is a wild card. It can stand in for any card in the deck. You get to choose. So the joker is something that you get to choose. So life is a game of poker, and you get to choose something. So you're given your body, you're given your parents, you're given where you live, you're given a lot when you're born, right? All of the things that you're given when you're born. You're given a set of circumstances. How you react to those circumstances, what you do with your life, is determined by that joker, that wild card, that thing that you decided what it was going to be, right? So that, I believe, is the meaning of this poem. Beyond that, perhaps he's saying, you make it mean what you want it to mean. You decide what this book is about. You decide what this search is about, what this poem is about. You decide. And if you do a good enough job with it, you'll win the pot, which is happiness. But you're going to play whether you like it or not, because you're here. You're reading the book. You're a player now. Page 70. Give me some men who are stout-hearted men who will fight for the right they adore. Start me with 10 who are stout-hearted men, and I'll soon give you 10,000 more. Shoulder to shoulder and bolder they grow as they go to the fore. Then there's nothing in the world can halt or mar a plan when stout-hearted men can stick together man to man. Halt. He picked a set of lyrics that had the word halt in there. There's nothing in the world can halt or mar a plan when stout-hearted men can stick together man to man. So he's telling us, be stout-hearted and stick together. And then nothing can be against you. Nothing can halt your plan. Page 75. Courage wears a crimson coat trimmed in trappings bold. Bold. Again, bold. I just wanted to pull out that there are words in these poems that he takes and uses in his own poem. And that's how important they are to him, that he took words from these poems, put in his poem. Courage wears a crimson coat trimmed in trappings bold. Knowledge dons a dress of note. Fame's cloth is gold. Again, knowledge and gold. Far they range and fair they roam, much they do and dare, while gray-gowned patience sits at home and weaves the cloth they wear. Patience. Who's Patience in the chase? Is it Forrest Fenn? It seems like it, because he's asked, when do you want the treasure to be found? He's like, I'm ambivalent about that. He's Patience. He's just watching. He's observing, right? He's the gray-gowned Patience that sits at home. Page 94. I included this not because so much that it's a poem, because it obviously doesn't rhyme, but it is in all caps. And Forrest has mentioned it so many times. It felt important, right? If you should ever think of me when I have passed this veil and wish to please my ghost, forgive a sinner and smile at a homely girl. It's the theme of moving on to the afterlife, and people are still thinking of me and doing something because of that. Forgiving a sinner and smiling at a homely girl. Page 101. The moving finger writes, and having writ moves on. Nor all your piety nor wit shall lure it back to cancel half a line, nor all your tears wash out a word of it. alike for those who for today prepare, and those that after some tomorrow stare. A muezzin from the tower of darkness cries, "Fools! Your reward is neither here nor there." Strange, is it not, that of the myriads who before us passed the door of darkness through, not one returns to tell us of the road, which to discover we must travel too. So we have there with a capital T. The word there is in the poem, as I have gone alone in there. Your reward is neither here nor there, here on earth, nor in the afterlife. There, afterlife, as I have gone alone in there, alone in there. This one, no one returns to tell us of the road. And we have to go through that door too, alone. We go alone into the afterlife. I'm going to continue on. This is from the book as well, right after this poem. Those thoughts have so much to say to me. There are others who have said the same things, perhaps less eloquently, but just as meaningfully, such as Andy Warhol, who certainly had his 15 minutes of fame, or Shakespeare in As You Like It, who wrote that all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. They have their entrances and their exits, and one man in his time plays many parts. One man in his time plays many parts. Well, Forrest Fenn played many parts, didn't he? He tells us about growing up as the child of the principal and the kid who prayed for D's, and then went on to join the military and was a fighter pilot for many, many years of his life, and then had another part to play, a gallery owner, somebody who made a lot of money schmoozing with celebrities and selling art. And then he had another part to play, digging up San Lazaro and bringing in young people to help with the dig and helping them with a second chance at life. And then an author and a promoter of artists and all the many parts he's played, and now the leader of this treasure hunt. So we can see he's talking about himself a lot here. Does it tell us why he hid the treasure, where he hid the treasure, why he wrote the poem the way he did? What about that? And he continues on, okay, Mr. Shakespeare, name just one player, even one part about which you speak. The name may be remembered if it is written, but what of the person? No, each one has faded like the smell of a dying daffodil. No sooner does one depart than another takes its place again and again, only for the same fate to befall. Isn't he using a lot of drama here, just as if he had pulled it right out of Shakespeare and expanded the drama? Interesting. Also interesting, he brought up Andy Warhol out of nowhere. Andy Warhol is usually remembered as the artist who said that he wanted to be a machine and that no one need ever look further than the surface when evaluating him or his art. Does that apply to Forrest? Because he always tells us the poem is straightforward. There's no subterfuge. And yet nobody's found the treasure. Page 131 from The Thrill of the Chase. I knew exactly where to hide the chest, so it would be difficult to find, but not impossible. It's in the mountains somewhere north of Santa Fe. Indecision is the key to flexibility, and that's why I waited so long to secret my cache. George Burns was 100 years old when someone asked him how his health was. He replied, "My health's good, but it's my age that's killing me." And like Eric Sloane at age almost 80, I figured it was time to act, so I wrote a poem. It's interesting he wrote it that way, because he told us it took him 15 years to write the poem. But he acted when he was almost 80. He was 79. Because he didn't want to wait until his age killed him. And it's in the mountains somewhere north of Santa Fe. Is that another metaphor, or is that straightforward? Page 136. Anyway, I've never been willing to stand idly by and be part of a forgotten history when I may be able to impact future events. My part will be very small in the big picture, but huge to me. Safe upon the solid rock the ugly houses stand. Come and see my shining palace built upon the sand. What does that mean? Ah, the ugly houses are on the rock. The shining palace is on the sand. When we know that life is fleeting and time is precious, we take full advantage of it right now, right here. When it's something that it's gonna last forever anyway. We don't put as much thought and worry into it, right? Page 142. This is another poem that Forrest Fenn wrote, Ode to Peggy Jean. Today I looked up in the sky and saw a sparrow on the fly. What ancient secrets does he know? Why am I here and cannot go? Ancient secrets does the sparrow flying over. What does he know? What does he see from his vantage point? Flying. Today I looked up in the sky and saw a raven flying by. He seemed so focused on his way. So tell me now why I must stay. Seemed so focused on his way, on the way he was going. So why do I have to stay here if the raven gets to go? Today I looked up in the sky and saw my shadow floating by. It seemed so strange. I wondered why. And now it's gone, but where am I? This harkens back to the man upon the stair who wasn't there, doesn't it? Shadow, ghost, afterlife. Today I looked up in the sky and saw that I shall never die. Forget the pain and harm you see. My loving wife looks after me. He's never going to die because he has progeny. He has written words, books that are out there. People will remember him. Page 147. I wish I could have lived to do the things I was attributed to. A little rhyme he put together because he loves to rhyme. He loves poems, doesn't he? Which are the important words in the poem, and which ones are there to satisfy the rhyme scheme? Remember, Forrest said you can't ignore any of the nouns in the poem, but the words that rhyme on the ends of the poem are not always nouns, are they? So can we discount them? Or is that risky? Here's the poem. As I have gone alone in there and with my treasures bold, I can keep my secret where and hint of riches new and old. And see, which ones are the important words? To me, where and old. The other two, there and bold, are there to make it rhyme. Just like scrib. He didn't know what a scrib was, but it rhymed, and that's what was important. Although there could be the important word, and where could be less important. Just one that rhymed. So that one, if it's there because afterlife, as pointed to in the Khayyam poem, here and there, here on earth, there in the afterlife, as I've gone alone and there in the afterlife. And with my treasures bold, again pulling those words out of those poems that are included in the book. I can keep my secret where and hint of riches new and old. I felt like bold could have been a different word if he'd wanted it to be. But he just used it to rhyme with old. He wanted the word old in there for a reason. Begin at where warm waters halt and take it in the canyon down. Not far, but too far to walk. Put in below the home of Brown. Obviously, Brown's the important word. It's capitalized. It's a proper noun. Forrest Fenn is very well versed in English literature and the proper use of nouns. What is a noun? What is a verb? What is an adjective? He knows all this stuff. He doesn't capitalize words willy-nilly. He did it on purpose because it is a proper noun. Halt and walk are both important words. He had to have those words in there. That's why they don't rhyme. He could have used different words. Not far, but too far to amble. Not far, but too far to another word for move forward movement, right? But he wanted the word walk in there. And he wanted the word halt in there. Those were important words. Down just rhymes with brown. From there, it's no place for the meek. The end is ever drawing nigh. There'll be no paddle up your creek, just heavy loads and water high. He focused on water high in that Hemispheres magazine article, so I felt like high was important here, and nigh was a word that rhymed. And the end is ever drawing nigh is sort of a poetic phrase that's used. It's used a lot. It's nothing new. No paddle up your creek is used a lot as well, but I think he wanted to say the word creek because there's a creek there. Because the poem is straightforward. There is a creek. No place for the meek. Well, he could have used a different word. No place for the shy. No place for the faint of heart. He could have used something else, but he went with meek because it rhymes with creek. If you've been wise and found the blaze, look quickly down your quest to cease, but tarry scant with marvel gaze. Just take the chest and go in peace. Okay, blaze is important, obviously, because it's a marker. It tells us, I found it. Here it is. Here's the blaze. He also brings it up in that Hemispheres magazine article. He tells us, what is a blaze? And he mentions 3 or 4 things that could be a blaze. Could be a blaze. But is this a metaphor? Or is it one of the things he mentioned? A white mark on a tree or a rock? We don't know. But it is important. Look down your quest to cease. Yes, cease. Tells you stop there. That's the end. That was an important word. Gaze rhymes with blaze. Peace rhymes with cease. So why is it that I must go? Go. Again, the death thing, right? I'm going to die. I'm going alone in there and to the afterlife. Why do I have to go and leave my trove for all to seek? He told us this story, right? He told us he initially wanted to write the poem about hiding a treasure because he was dying and he wanted to die with that and leave a poem with the clues. So we know this was the reason. Why is it that I must go and leave my trove for all to seek? Why do I have to go? And why can't I take it with me? Now I have to leave it here for all the other people to find. So the go is the important word. The answer is I already know. I've done it tired and now I'm weak. He could have used another word for seek. And leave my trove for all to find or to search for. Or he could have used something else besides seek. So weak is probably the important word there. Not sure why he wanted the word weak so badly, but he did. So hear me all and listen good. Your effort will be worth the cold. Obviously, the cold is important because it rhymes with gold for one thing, but let's continue on. So hear me all and listen good. Your effort will be worth the cold. If you are brave and in the wood, I give you title to the gold. So hear me all and listen good. Well, he could have said a different word. Listen well. So hear me all and listen well, because that would have made more grammatical sense than good. Listen well. If you are brave and in the dell. See, he could have used something else besides wood, but wood was important. He had to use the word wood. That was important. So good rhymes. Your effort will be worth the cold. I give you title to the gold. He always intended to say, I give you title to the gold. But he has used so many different words for the treasure, right? He could have used the word treasure. I give you trove. He could have used the word trove again. He could have used any word there meaning the treasure or the jewels or anything. But he wanted to rhyme with cold. So cold is the important word there. So in my opinion, rhyming words from the poem that are important: where, old, brown, creek, high, blaze, cease, go, weak, wood, cold. Also, halt and walk are important because they don't rhyme, so they have to both be important. All right. I hope that's interesting for you. And for those of you in the member vault, you can look for this download in the member vault along with this video and enjoy that. Looking those up, giving it some thought. What do you think about the poem? Why did Forrest Fenn write it the way he did? Why does he say he drew the poem like an architect? Why? What does it mean that it's like the bones of something that we need to fill in, right? If it's the plans or the map, how is it a map? Because it's got to be straightforward. It's telling us where to go. So we need to find these specific places, and obviously He wants us to know these are all places that you can find on a map, and it's straightforward. He also tells us many times you can find the treasure with just the poem, and the book will give you some hints that will help you decipher the clues. Why do we need help deciphering the clues if it's straightforward? You tell me. Please let me know what you think of the poem and the subterfuge and the straightforwardness of it and how it's a map and which words are important within the poem and why in the comments. And I will see you next time on Important Words. Thank you so much for watching. And for A Gypsy's Kiss, I'm Shelley Carney.